just weeping and kind of like unable. I was just like, really? Really? What do you mean? And I'm like, get yourself together, get your shit together. Like, just go tell.
When I first heard Taylor Swift's emotional words on that podcast, I knew instantly that this wasn't just another story to casually scroll past or treat like background noise in the endless stream of celebrity chatter. It was something that carried weight, something that demanded to be unpacked in detail, because what she said about Andy Reid and Travis Kelce was raw, emotional, and deeply telling about the pressures of living at the intersection of. I found myself struck by the tremble in her voice, the sincerity that even her harshest critics would struggle to deny, and I couldn't help but reflect on how this incident, whatever its exact details may be, has now spiraled into a much larger conversation that touches not just sports or music, but culture, media, and even how we consume narratives as an audience. I kept replaying her words in my mind, how she admitted that the unfortunate incident wasn't only about Travis, but also about Andy Reid, a figure she clearly respects, and how she described it as heartbreaking to see both of them pulled into the storm. And I realized that for all the tabloids that rushed to simplify her life into clickbait, this moment revealed the emotional labor of being tied to someone whose career lives under, Critics will jump in, of course, they always do. They'll say Taylor shouldn't have spoken publicly, that she's only fueling drama, or that she's somehow a distraction for Travis Kelce's career, but I can't ignore the counterweight to those arguments, the fact that without her presence, without her audience, without her influence, the NFL wouldn't be seeing the global surge in attention that it has during Chiefs games since she first appeared in the stands, and so the same people who accuse her of off the spotlight she brings. To me, that feels hypocritical. I thought about Andy Reid, too, a man who has built decades of respect in the league, someone viewed almost as a father figure to Kelce, and I imagined how hard it must be for Taylor to see two people she cares about in very different ways, entangled in a narrative that's less about facts and more about speculation, because that's what happens in our media cycle. It takes fragments, sound bites, out-of-context remarks, and builds them into lists them into narrative. But Taylor, by speaking out, disrupted that cycle. She gave us not gossip, but emotion, and I think that's why the story hit me so strongly. It's easy to dismiss her as just a pop star with too much influence, but in this case, she became a human being acknowledging pain, acknowledging respect, acknowledging the challenge of watching people she cares about go through a very public storm. And here's what's ironic. While some channels and commentators act like she's invading football space, the reality is that the NFL itself has embraced her presence, broadcasting her reactions on live television, marketing her appearances in the stands, and using her as a magnet for new viewers. So if the league is willing to profit off her influence, why should she be criticized for speaking out when something painful happens? That's the double standard we rarely discuss. I find myself questioning, too, how much of the backlash is rooted in gender dynamics, because we've seen this story before. When a powerful woman dares to exist in spaces historically dominated by men, she is framed as a problem, as a distraction, as someone who doesn't belong. And yet, she does belong, not because she's Taylor Swift, the global superstar, but because she is, quite simply, Travis Kelce's partner, a woman who cares about the man she loves, and it's natural for her to feel and express emotions when things go wrong. Wouldn't we expect the same from anyone else in a relationship? But because it's Taylor Swift, every word becomes magnified, politicized, weaponized, until the core humanity gets lost in the noise. And this is where I get frustrated with how the media handles stories like this, because instead of diving deep into the substance, what this reveals about the pressures athletes and their loved ones face, they flatten it into shallow gossip, chasing clicks instead of truth. I didn't want to do that, not here, not today. I wanted to sit with her words, to feel the heaviness behind them, and to trace the ripple effects of what happens when one of the most influential women in the world decides to speak about an incident that connects sports and personal life. The truth is, we don't know every detail about what happened between Andy Reid and Travis Kelce in this unfortunate situation, and maybe we never will. But what we do know is how it made Taylor feel. And that matters because emotions are not distractions. They're part of the story, maybe even the most important part. I thought too about how Travis must feel, caught between loyalty to his coach, loyalty to his team, and love for Taylor, and I wondered how many athletes have gone through similar struggles balancing the demands of their career with the needs of their personal life, only without the global microscope watching their every move. The difference here is scale, the enormity of the spotlight, and how the internet turns everything into a battleground. Some fans cheer for Taylor and Travis as a symbol of love and crossover culture, while others resent her presence, claiming she hijacks the narrative of football. In reality, isn't this what culture is? A messy, intertwined mix of stories, relationships, and influences that bleed into each other? To me, it's dishonest to pretend that celebrity culture and sports can be neatly separated. They've been fused for decades, and Taylor's presence has simply intensified that fusion to a global level. I also couldn't ignore how her words revealed something deeply personal. That respect for Andy Reid, the way she spoke of him with admiration, underscored that this isn't about petty drama. It's about her wrestling with the pain of seeing a respected figure and loved one pulled into controversy. That's a human reaction. And maybe that's why her podcast appearance struck such a chord, because beneath the fame and the headlines, she was simply being a partner, woman navigating the very real challenges of loving someone in the public eye. And as I sat with all of this, I thought about how easy it is for us as viewers to consume these stories passively, to click a headline and move on without thinking about the emotional realities behind them. But I don't want to move on just yet. I want to linger here to remind myself and anyone listening that Taylor Swift's comments were more than gossip. They were a glimpse into the cost of fame, the pressures of public life, and the vulnerability that comes with being human. And so when I ask you whether Taylor Swift is a distraction or whether she is brave for speaking up, I'm not asking it as a rhetorical trick to drive engagement. I'm asking it because it matters, because how we answer says a lot about how we see women in public life, how we see athletes under pressure, and how we as a culture decide which voices are allowed to matter.